What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. I am Lieutenant Nathaniel Flint of the Landship Scorpios, and today we are going to be discussing the Iron Harvest beta campaign for Polania. This is kind of an overview. We're going to be talking about a few things. First off, we're going to go back through and just kind of re-review each of the sections really quick. Second, we're going to be talking about lore. We're going to be getting into what the lore of the campaign, what was introduced, some rampant speculation, as well as where we kind of hope to see it go. And then lastly, we're going to do a whole kind of generalized review, how we feel this is doing, how we feel that the campaign so far prepares us for multiplayer, as well as how it is on its own, time-based, everything like that. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. First, we're going to talk about Anna's Shot. Anna's Shot is the first mission of the game. It is very important. It will set the kind of tone narratively for the game. It'll kind of deal with, it's a lot of things. It's setting up Polania as a people and as characters that we are rooting for or not rooting for. It's the beginning of the game, so hopefully a lot of these characters will continue to flutter through the rest of the campaigns as well. Unless they are really compartmentalizing them, I expect to see Anna throughout the entire campaign. The entire story is Anna's story. We're going to be seeing different parts of it. We're going to be seeing different parts through different other characters for the factions, but I'm assuming for the main campaign, it's Anna's story throughout all of it. And also, this mission really serves as the tutorial level. It is very important to teach us the basics of the game, of the RTS genre, and how to move and how to prepare for the game. And it is so clever playing snowball fights with the kids to kind of get combat, movement, and cover and those kind of things down. So clever, teaching us about heroes and special abilities with the brother and everything, dealing with multiple units, switching between them, having to move and do different things. And it does a very good job of that. The only negative I have is as a tutorial level, it leaves out so much. It's actually, I would say, as far as a tutorial go, it kind of branches into the next few levels, which I like, but knowing that the beta campaign is roughly halfway through Polania's campaign, it makes Polania feel more like a tutorial faction rather than the tutorial level or just the first faction in the story, and I have a little bit of problems with that. I would much rather it be that there is a tutorial level or even two levels that introduce things slowly rather than a whole tutorial campaign. However, as you'll see when we talk about the other sections, I'm loving it. I've got some negatives, but the positives so far are outweighing them. So far, it is my favorite use of a tutorial mission in a game. Well, definitely an RTS game. It's very well done, very low stakes, and does a great job of teaching you the basics. Next up, we have Defending Zalesi, which was a good mission. It was a great way to kind of introduce us to the world, introduce us to Wojtek. We kind of get the idea Rusvoyets are a problem. It's after the Great War, but things still aren't settling down. We're kind of getting the idea there are these big mechs. They're used in everyday life. And the Rusvoyets are still, for some reason, occupying Polania even after the peace agreement. We get a lot of the major players name dropped. It's a really cool mission. However, it still serves as a tutorial mission. You start getting other units. You learn how to kind of move around and defend as a small unit. And it does a great job of showing you that with proper tactics, you can overcome a bigger enemy. So there's a few instances of you and these 2 or 3 units of riflemen are up against mechs or whatever, and it's super scary. It's not really fun the first time you kind of slam into them, but it does a good job of being like, no, this is how you need to handle it, and you're able to overcome it. In the end, we have some pretty big things dropped in this mission. Lore-wise, they set up the things, and we have the motivation in a story arc. This would be the inciting incident that sets Anna on her quest and changes her life forever into the unknown. I like it. It's a beautiful, I love the Polania countryside going into like a Polania village. It's a very good use of setting. It's beautiful. It would make a great multiplayer map. I just really liked playing through it. It only took me about 30 minutes, give or take. I think my video is somewhere around the 30-minute mark with this. So it is still good. The only negative I have is that it's still teaching concepts and knowing what is in store for the gameplay. It's also not teaching concepts. We still don't have mechs, we still don't have base building. It's kind of just still slowly introducing us to everything. And it still feels like a tutorial mission, even though by this point we're well over an hour into the game. The next one is To the Rescue. And this mission was slow going. This mission took me almost 2 hours to do. To the Rescue is you join up with the resistance fighters and you're going into the city occupied by Rosoviet forces, making your way to where they're holding your father at the train station. Along the way, it is a suggested secondary marker, but the way I played through it, I think that it is a must-do to help your captured comrades along the way in 2 different parts, and then you kind of move up and get some mechs to assault the train yards where they believe they're holding your father. Once you get there, Rusvariets start counterattacking. You gotta hold the area for a little bit. It gets bigger, it gets crazier. There's big mechs and everything, and then you end up getting saved by your Uncle Lek right at the end in the resistance. This was fun, but it was slow going in the beginning. I didn't understand fully. This is the first time I recorded myself playing through without understanding how the map would go. Some forces I realized kind of respawn in certain other areas, so it was a lot of fighting all the time with a very small group of forces. This kind of teaches you about engineers, a little bit of fortifications. They tell you to drop some mines down, but I never had a point where I really needed to drop mines down. In my playthrough, as you can see in my video, I kind of put them down right after they mentioned it, and then it ended up not, I put them down in the wrong direction. I didn't know which way the enemy would be coming to fight, and then they kind of sat there taking up a population, which I kind of don't like that mines take population, but that's for a different day. They just kind of sit there and take up space. There was no way to like recall them or like break them down or move them. So they just kind of stayed there, and I ended up not using it throughout the mission at all. They teach you about weapon systems, which was kind of cool. But again, I felt the need to bring them with me wherever I went. And I don't think that was intended. I think it was very much intended to use them for set pieces once you get a hold of them, and then you leave them behind and you keep moving on to get the mechs. They teach you with mechs. We get the Smeli and the machine gun one, and you use those to basically assault the town and save your father, and then defend against the waves. In the end, this mission was great. It was a good start. It kind of had us moving around, reinforcing things we had learned in the other 2 missions, introducing some new concepts to get us familiar with them, and then at the end, having a nice finale at the end, introducing big mechs for the Rusvariets, having them come in and just dominate. In the end, we had to be saved by our Polania brethren. It was just a lot of fun. I felt that it was a bit slow, and in the end, this one was kind of forgettable. It's kind of the cheer up Charlie of the missions so far. It's the one I never really remember, even though it took me almost 2 hours to do when waiting for everyone to move around with the weapon systems and stuff. The negatives, besides how long it kind of took me to do, it's also still another tutorial mission not teaching us base building, and just kind of taking up time again. We're 3 missions in, we're almost I would say 2 to 4 hours. If you know what you're doing, you're better at the games than me. You're already 2 to 4 hours into the campaign already. We're still doing tutorials, and it just feels a bit sluggish. But on the other hand, I don't know how I would change it. Like, it feels right. Like, it feels like a natural progression with the story. Story-wise, no complaints. This is very good story beats we're hitting. She goes, she saves her dad, we get some more name-drop things, and we're getting ready to go. The next one is Railroad Robbery, and by far, I could probably honestly say that this was my favorite of the missions. I have some wishy-washy views of the last mission, but I mean, this mission was very good. Introduces base building. We finally have that. It introduces go out and take resource points and then hold them. They're gonna come and retake your resource points. They're gonna attack your base. They're gonna have things you need to attack their bases, take their points, hold them off, build mechs, build other units. There's going to be a back and forth. You're on your way to take a train at the top of the level. There's bigger, badder mechs introduced, so you need to amass a force to attack each location. This mission took me forever. I think it took me an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. I think it was an hour and a half of recording through it. It's a good, bulky mission. It took some time to get through. Story-wise, it's the first time we meet Uncle Lek. You get to kind of get it. Well, it's not the first time we meet him. That was way back in the first cutscene. But we get to see his mech, which is really cool, really powerful. This is around the time where I started realizing that Anna maybe isn't the best unit. I started keeping her back more. Uncle Lek can take a hit. He's very good mech to mech. He's also very capable of getting really low in health and booking it. So it was just fun. We had a mission. We're going to steal a train. We steal the train. At the end, we had to do a last-ditch hold where big mechs were coming to kick our butts. And we had to hold a line. We had to build a second base from scratch kind of deal, and hold our defenses on that line. That was just super fun. That was a great way to kind of cap it off what we were doing in that mission. In the end, I ended up really loving it. It was a little long, but I didn't feel it. It felt perfect. In the end, when it was done, I wish that it had been longer. I wish there was more stuff to do. But that was that. I really enjoyed this mission. And lastly in the beta campaign is A Path to Hope. And this one I have some opinions on. So A Path to Hope was this really fun mission. We have the train, but we have to get it through these mountains when an area of the mountain pass was blocked off. So now we have to snake the train through the mountains to get across this bridge to get to this tunnel where we're going into the city. And it kind of starts off without anything that we had kind of did prior. There's a new mechanic with the train. It's got an artillery piece on it. And then you can add some guys and they can shoot from the train. And you are snaking the train. You're accompanying it with the heroes and a small force through these mountains, through these different bases and fortifications of the Rusfayette. And then halfway through, literally halfway through, you reach a point where you can't go any farther. You start building a base. and you need to basically destroy 2 risk bases to continue, and it's a big finale. Now this one was long. This took me hours. I think in the end I was at 6 hours with this game. And the reason why is, as many of you know, there's a bug in it in our current release that is available to the public. And there's no real clear reason why it like sets off. I didn't keep a lot of my stuff in the videos, more because I just raged and needed to go take a break. But you basically get to the base building part, you start working, and then the game just freezes and you gotta restart. And for me anyways, except for one time, it restarted the whole level. I had to start from the beginning again, and it was an absolute nightmare. It takes me about an hour, a little bit over an hour. Eventually I got it to a little bit under an hour to do the whole part with the train, snaking through the mountains, just to get to the base building part. And for me to just know that it was gonna freeze every single time, that really peeved me off. When it's basically a whole campaign mission, and then you have a whole one afterward. Sure enough, when I finally got past it, and I was like, yay, it didn't freeze! It took me almost another whole hour just to finish that mission. I only did it once, I got through. That's the one that's recorded, as you can see. So just getting through that last bit was almost a whole another hour on its own, hour and a half maybe, I think it was, where you gotta basically go and get the resource points. You gotta stop that other base from attacking your base, and they're really relentless. They really come at you. So I had a mission, I'm gonna go and attack this other base, get rid of it, then I'm gonna do my mass and head out. And then attacking that final base takes some time as well to kind of make your way through it meticulously. There's big bads. My overall feeling for the mission though, wow, I absolutely love that finale. That finale, as you can see in my video, that's after hours of trying to get footage of the end of this mission and trying to get to the end of this mission. And it was so annoyed, but wow was I excited. It is a finale. They introduced a lot of risk units we haven't seen yet. They have some artillery. They have the big mech that is the one from sight with the sides. They have a train that they attack with. There's the risk mech suits that we got to see. There's all these new units that haven't been, I guess, officially released or talked about yet. It was just kind of fun to see that in action, to fight against them, to make my way through. It felt so rewarding to have done the work of taking out the other base, having all the resources to build a force to go in and attack. I even got a little bit cavalier and brought the train in to help fight back some of the forces. It was just this whole thing that we did, and it felt great to beat it. It felt like a huge finale. It was great. This would mark about the halfway point. We got introduced to some new units. The other hero unit and the cavalry units, we got a bunch of more story. It is just fantastic. But man, did it take some time to get there. In the end, this felt like more tutorial, but I know that this was a gimmick. The train thing, they have already said, is just a mission, maybe 2 in the campaign. It's not really gonna be a whole thing. Like, you're not gonna get trained all the time. It's not a big point of a gameplay thing. It's not really gonna be used in multiplayer. It is a campaign kind of gimmick, and I felt like it was so frustrating to learn and get used to, change my playstyle for, just for it to be a gimmick. But in the end, I made some comments on that. In the end, I would take it back. I spent some time on this mission. It is a long mission, even without a bug. I mean, it's easily 2.5 hours of mission. And it feels like it should be 2 separate missions. However, in the end, I would replay it. It's gimmicky, it's different, but it's fun. And It was very frustrating now, but it's a beta. Bugs ruin everything. And in the end, I was able to do it. I was able to change enough of my play style to be successful in what I was doing. I talked about this more in my part 6 of that. But yeah, I loved it. And it was a good, oh, what a finale for our beta campaign to have all those big mechs and everything. So now that we're done with that, why don't we talk about lore? What was actually talked about? What are we expecting for story? And what kind of big names were dropped that the layman may not recognize or realize? So talking about the lore, the story is pretty straightforward. We start off with Anna. She is a Polanian. She is kind of a tomboy. She doesn't want to be treated differently because she's a girl, and she's very feisty, has a fiery spirit. Perfect for the rebel story arc that we're about to kind of get into, the freedom fighter angle, the Mockingjay kind of character arc, and I love it so far. The only person who kind of gets her, who kind of lets her be herself, is her brother. He goes off to war against their father's wishes and dies in the Great War, World War I. And in the aftermath of that, her father is kind of destroyed. He's probably a little more overprotective now, but she grows up just wanting to be like him in either way. Surprise! Rusvayats come to town. They're aggressive. No one is really liking that. They find out that they're looking for this doctor. So I don't have the doctor's name right offhand. You can watch the cutscenes in the videos. But they're looking for this doctor. It turns out it's her father or grandfather. I'm pretty sure it's her father. And he kind of says, oh, that's not what it is. So he sacrifices himself to save them, but she's like, screw that, we're gonna help you. We're gonna fight off these Rusvayats and we're gonna help you out. So she ends up going to look for him. She kind of helps him out. He's got this metal arm that does all this kind of magic stuff. It's not magic, it's like electrical, whatever, disrupts mechs, very powerful. When she goes to find him, they have this Rusvayat guy, Zubov, who comes and he's looking for him. He's like, oh, is that what you call yourself now? Oh, isn't this fun? Blah, blah, blah. And he kidnaps her father to talk about the factory. So they go. Anna goes to rescue him. Ends up she's too late. He's died in the interrogation or in the whatever the Rusvayats did to him. But Zubov stole his arm, saying that it was the key to get into the factory and is the key to more technological advances for the Rusvayats. So, Anna goes out for revenge. Her and her Uncle Lek kind of go off to revenge, but they go off to stop them from finding this other scientist who sounds to be a Saxony scientist who has the key to the factory, who might be able to help get people into the factory. So they're going off to protect him. To do that, they need to get into the city that the Rusvayats kind of control and are holding. So they steal a train and they go off and they break in. And that is basically the story, where we are left not much more than that. Rusvayats are trying to get into the factory. They kind of don't know what the factory it is. You kind of learn that the father was a great scientist during the war who escaped afterwards. He wanted to live a simple life. You kind of get the idea that the Rusvayats are after the technology in the factory. We don't know what it is. Sounds like multiple people have escaped to multiple areas after the war. We kind of get some name drops of things like the Nordic kingdoms, the Saxony Empire, the Rusvayat Union, and the Polania, the Republic of Polania. We kind of get some name dropped of some regions, and that's all we kind of are. So what does this mean? What does this mean for lore? So I'm going to start by making a connection to something that King Art Games has said, please don't make connections to. It's similar, we're using the 1920 plus universe, but we're not doing the same thing, and I'm so sorry, King Art Games. But how can I not? We are talking about Scythe. We'll talk about the general, not too much, but in general, Scythe is a similar thing. The point of the board game is you have a map that we're told is a map of Europa. Let me see if
I can get that in frame. You get the idea. It's a map, kind of a map of Europa. I'm actually looking at the map, the full map. You're looking at the half map. Let's do something like this. There we go. So,
map of Europa. It's surrounding the factory in the center of the map. And the whole point of the game Scythe is that the nations of Europa are trying to get at the technology held within the factory after the Great War. During the Great War, the factory produced all these superhuman technologies that they used to defend the factory, but also to make their grand machines. They sold these machines to the nations of Europa, which were a bunch of nations like Saxony, Rusviet, Polania, the Nordic kingdoms, and Crimea. After the war, it is said that the factory was abandoned in Scythe lore, and that the people or the technicians have just kind of left, but they left a vacant factory full of this technology behind. So with the rumors of these grand machines and modern marvels just open for the taking, the factions of the world divulge onto the factory and the land surrounding it, and they try to control it. They try to earn the popularity and trust of the people of the land. They fight for control of the territory. They go in and ransack the factory with these great machines that will help their nation succeed in controlling the area. They gather the most amount of resources to help them hold the land. They build monuments to their nation, etc., etc. That is the general point and story of Scythe. There's some more in the extended bit. There's like a bigger campaign story that is a little bit longer, but for the most part, that is the general story of Scythe. Now, they've already name-dropped a few other nations, which I'm excited about, and they have talked about the factory and that it's locked down. It is implied through the talk that the factory isn't as much abandoned as it is locked down or locked away, and they can't get inside it, they can't get past the defenses, maybe they can't even get close, whatever the situation is. And that's why they're looking for these scientists who used to work in the factory, is so that they can have keys to get into the factory and then plunder it of all of its resources, its technologies. We have already kind of seen it where, like, just his hand, his metal hand, is so powerful that it can take down a single mech just by punching it really hard or whatever. And we've already kind of got inklings of this. They kind of also name dropped, I believe, Nikola Tesla, that I think, spoiler alert a little bit, I think he's a big player in one of the expansions for Scythe, and he's one of the main people who kind of get the factory going. He's the reason for it. I'm not sure of the full story. I've kind of been hoping to play that expansion myself, so I've kind of avoided it. It makes sense since the factory is technically in what we would consider, I think, Croatia. And that's kind of, or like maybe a Czechoslovakia or something, kind of the center of Eastern Europe where all these nations would be converging on this area. So it kind of makes sense, I guess, a little bit. But anyways, that's kind of Scythe, and we know that in Jacob Rosalski's art in his general story for 1920 plus, the whole idea that there was this great war, technology rapidly evolved, and a place called the factory did help stoke those fires and spread this technology, or at least encourage the development of similar technologies from the nations surrounding the factory. This is a base 1920 plus thing, and now we know that this is kind of being worked in to Iron Harvest. So what does this mean for the campaign for Iron Harvest? What can we expect, taking what we know from other medium like Scythe and from Jacob Wazalski? What can we expect out of Scythe? I think that this is the entire campaign, is the battle over the factory, and these nations, Polania, Rus-Voyet, and Saxony, converging onto the factory to get at the technologies in order to either reignite the war, keep the war from starting, or just having domination over the region, which they're kind of playing it up that the region is going to be mostly Polania, that at least the Polania storyline is about taking back or keeping invaders off of Polania land, where you kind of have an instance where like Saxony and Rus-Voyet are kind of converging and kind of overstepping their bounds with the little Polania nation. So it would make sense that the freedom fighters would want that power. I think that this will end up being what we can expect. I think maybe we can expect other scientists, like we saw your father, with other technologies that are grand. I think we can expect at least maybe some of the heroes to get some form of like supercharged ability from the factory late in the campaign, which I think the last campaign is going to be Saxony. So late in the Saxony campaign, we might end up getting something just marvelous from them that would really help you out in a last ditch, like crazy against you, the odds are against you mission for the finale of the game. You get some kind of godlike lightning hand, or maybe you get a mech that is just unbelievably amazing and very specific to the campaign. I highly doubt any kind of factory upgrades would be available in the multiplayer. I think what we're going to end up seeing is this Polania is learning about this, trying to prevent it, trying to get the word out to the scientists, maybe trying to help him escape, but maybe they decide they need to make a run for the factory, and that'll kind of end the Polania campaign. Rus-Voyet's the second one. It's right there in the middle. I think Rus-Voyet is going to be, general outline, is a rush for the factory. They have this clandestine destiny. They believe they can get in. They have one of the arms. Maybe they have the other. Maybe they get the scientists or whatever. Their mission is getting up to the factory. They're going to be contending with Polania, who we're already familiar with, but I think they'll also be introducing Saxony, Saxony's only, like, Polania is the freedom fighters. They're not a real threat against Rus-Voyet, I suppose. So what we're going to see in the Rus-Voyet campaign is more Saxony, maybe more stuff of them being like, they are the real threat. They're the ones that are like, you better not be going after that factory. We saw it first. And then I think Saxony is either going to be their campaign about holding the factory. Maybe Saxony actually succeeds and gets in and they have to hold the factory, or they're discovering what is in the factory. Or Saxony is going to realize what's going on and they're going to do a rush for the factory. And then what's going to happen is Rus-Voyet gets in their mission, or maybe they're very close, and maybe they get in halfway through Saxony's campaign. And Saxony is like, we have to kick them out of the factory, or we need to defend against the Rus-Voyet aggression now that they have these factory tools. Or maybe they're just out for revenge for a Saxony citizen, like the other scientist. Maybe he dies, or maybe he gets kidnapped. So they're like, you know, you can't do that. There's Saxony sovereignty. We're going to go after you. I really like this idea. Again, this is all speculation, rampant speculation. But I really like this idea for it. I like the idea of that kind of arc for things. It feels good. It already feels in world. It already plays with things that we have access to in Scythe, access in Jacob Wazalski's art. We already kind of get the idea for that. It gives us a good way to see some really cool new units that maybe aren't a part of the factions. Maybe they're campaign only or skirmish or challenge mode only units that are just very special, play a different way, and aren't tied down to a faction. Maybe it's just whoever controls them gets these special things. I also love this because we have discussed that if they ever did DLC, they would want to do DLC campaigns as well as to introduce us to a faction, and they would want it to kind of go with the story mode that we have, or the story that they're already telling. And I think that a mad rush on the factory fits the world and fits with some factions that are already established. I hate to keep saying Scythe, but in Scythe we already had those in the Nordic kingdoms, which were already name dropped in the game, and I think that's amazing. They're my number one choice for a DLC person, or for Crimea, the nomadic people. They are also close enough, and their lands are close enough to the factory to also be worried. They're also not considered like this really big faction, like very powerful like the other mega places like Saxony and Russia. So maybe they would have a similar story need like Polania, that they are scared of some other bigger nation getting hold of even more power and threatening them. So they would also need to make a rush on the factory to kind of hold on to their own sovereignty. And I really think that this would be a really cool way to introduce them, even along the events of the first campaign that we already know of. And we're kind of introducing more factions in a DLC campaign, reintroducing ourselves to their units and everything, and then putting them smack dab. This is where they were during these events, or even just slightly after the campaign. This is them now interacting with what is left. We do know that we are getting DLC kind of bonus missions at the end, like a continuation for Polania, Saxony, and Rusviet. So I think it makes sense with our current speculation of story that that would take place after the events of the campaign. They get the factory, whatever happens will happen, and then it's them dealing with the technologies that have been gotten a hold of, who won out over the factory, or how all three of them have kind of lost, and then dealing with how all three of them deal with whoever did win, or maybe just dealing with everyone losing and not getting what they want out of the factory, and how the world kind of settles after that. I do believe that Polania will get their independence and their sovereignty back, but I think it will come at a great cost. So we'll have to wait and see how that will work. And with that, let's move on to the next part, but I gotta change battery. I don't know where I was in my rant. I had to go change the batteries, and then I didn't have any good batteries, so I had to wait for them to charge a little bit before I could finish up this video. I don't know where I'm at in my rant, so let's move on to part 3. Part 3 is the overall what I feel about this campaign, and right now, I feel strongly about this campaign. It is going to be so good. The narrative is strong. The characters are believable. The cutscenes are really good. I really like them. I'm assuming that my review is that everything we've seen is not final product. That everything at bare minimum is going to get a little bit better. So that's why I'm going to just shower it with praise. It is a beta. There are things to be expected with the beta. So I'm assuming that the cutscenes we're seeing are not finished. And they still look good. So hopefully they'll get a little bit better, a little bit more polished, and just blow our minds. The levels are very good. Besides some things I said that I feel like all this time it's been a tutorial mission, and I'm a little afraid that Polania is just a tutorial faction, and we won't get into like a real campaign until we get into Rusviet or Saxony. There's still, I mean, we're only about halfway. There's still a few more levels for us to really get into the grittiness, to work out some more stuff with Polania. I'm just super excited for it. The story, despite all my speculations and drawing from all these various corners of Jacob Rosalski's world, I mean, it's all speculation. The story at this point can still go anywhere. It can be a story about revenge. It can be a story about getting to the factory. It can be something completely different. It could all revolve around Polania's war for independence or to keep their borders sovereign. So it could be a completely separate thing. Despite my speculations, the story could still go anywhere, and that's still exciting. I still feel like we wouldn't be cheated if it went a completely different direction, but I feel like the seeds have been planted. I'm fairly confident in being close with my speculations. Overall, do I think that the beta campaign, what we've seen so far, prepares you for the multiplayer? And right now, I want to say no. I feel like the train robbery one, and maybe your last one, gets you used to the ideas that you will need in a multiplayer or in a skirmish or in one of the challenge missions. However, I do not feel that it's really good at preparing you for that. I really feel like it is bringing you through an experience and telling a story and slowly introducing concepts. What I'm feeling right now is it doesn't need to be a tutorial for the multiplayer. I feel like, if anything, what I realize right now is a multiplayer better set me up to be aware of certain units or what I would need to use to get through these levels. For instance, right now with some of the how it's kind of balanced out, the smellies for the not smellies, but those mechs, the go-to Polania mechs are like the cornerstone of the campaign. Whenever I got to use them, I did use them and relied on them pretty heavily. I didn't need to have to do that, and it's because of dealing with the multiplayer that I knew that I wouldn't have to waste a lot of resources on getting the artillery or getting a lot of foot soldiers and infantry on the field. Like, as soon as I had a chance, victory is basically getting as many of those cheaper mechs out as possible and overwhelming them. So if anything, it's kind of the reverse. How I feel right now with how this is done, I really feel like the campaigns need to be longer. I wouldn't have an issue with the pacing or with everything if I knew that there was another 5 to 7 levels left of Polania, but knowing that there's more closer to 2, 3 to 5 levels, that's it, and it's basically wrapping it up so that we can move on to another faction. I feel like Polania is really not getting the best end, and if each faction is going to have things like this where we start very small, introducing things little by little, I'm assuming that the problem that I'm seeing with the Polania campaign is that it's basically a tutorial campaign, and then Rusvoyet and Saxony will be the meat and bones of the campaign, and I kind of feel a little bit bad for them for that. So maybe instead of 3 or 4 missions that are the tutorials, what you'll end up getting is with Saxony and with Rusvoyet are maybe 1 going, these are the differences, you already know how to build bases, you already know how to build mechs, you already know about this, we're going to sprinkle them in and introduce you little by little, but for the most part you get the idea. We'll have 1 mission or maybe 2 that are like, this is the difference, this is Rusvoyet, oh now it's Saxony, this is the difference, this is Saxony, and then they'll jump right in, sprinkling in every so often, you know, oh, this mission, we'll do it with flamethrowers, and then you you get access to the flamethrower units in that mission, or you get one where it's like, the Tsar tank or the Kaiser tank needs to be deployed. We must protect the Kaiser tank or whatever. And then you get that big tank in one of the later Saxony missions. We don't know, but for right now, I feel like more. I do like the campaign, and if I knew that there was more to it, I would feel a lot better about how tutorially these first few Polania missions feel. And I would be more willing to forgive some things like the train one that is so long and it really feels like it needs to be split into two. But all that aside, even if it doesn't change at all, let's say we only have 2 more missions for Polania, it's still good. I'm still very excited to see what the finished product will look like. I'm still very excited to play more of it. Despite all my hemming and hawing, I feel like it was just circumstance that really gave me a hiccup on the one level I'm having a real hiccup on. I would replay these, and I did replay a lot of the beginning ones a lot. And I haven't done a lot of replaying of the last few, except for the last one that I've replayed the fucking train part over and over and over again. But I feel like I still would. Especially when the game comes out, I won't feel like it'll be a slog replaying these levels to see the final bit. I'm very excited for the story. I'm loving the quality that we get to see. I'm glad that I was able to partake in this beta and see what we're getting. And I feel very confident that the campaign is going to be worth the price of the game on its own. Even though I'm really terrible in the multiplayer thing, I really think that the campaign is going to be worth the price of admission. And with that, there's really not much more to say on this without doing more rambling and making this video go on longer. So if you like the campaign, let me know down in the comments below, what was your favorite part of the campaign? Did you have a section that just irked you? Do you like the feel that it's going? And what are your visions for the future? We're going to do a lot more videos about Iron Harvest. We're going to be playing some more of the skirmishes and the challenge missions. We're going to be playing some more of PvP with some friends of ours, as well as playing against maybe some randos and seeing how that works out. We are also going to do another video talking about DLC. Everyone keeps bringing it up, and I want to do a video talking about my arguments for it. I've kind of said it on the Discord as well as around, like on the in the Reddit sometimes, that I have just a different feeling, but the same requests for DLC keeps coming up. So I want to do a whole separate video based on that, talking about my idea of the DLC and really what I think will be the best. But at the moment, it's still way too early to get into DLC talk. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe for more content, especially if you're into Iron Harvest. We are covering Iron Harvest on this channel. We don't do a ton of video game stuff, and it's not the only thing we will be working on during this time, but we will be covering more of Iron Harvest, including a big unboxing when I get everything from the Kickstarter coming my way. We're going to be doing a nice big unboxing once that arrives. And remember, it's not that long. We're entering summer, and the release date is sometime in the sometime in the fall, towards the end of autumn. Maybe being pushed back into winter because of everything that's going on. But, I mean, it's coming, so we're excited. We can't wait to see more. Thank you guys so much. If you're playing the beta, please remember to play, give feedback, submit bug reports, test it, replay things, play in different ways, see what the feel is, and share that feedback. It is our job as beta testers to really make sure that we are doing our best to test everything, give our thoughts, give constructive feedback, not just this sucks and blah blah blah. Like, try to explain why you're unhappy with certain things, disappointed with others, or why you like things. It's all of that is helpful. Beta is still at a point where major things can be changed, even if it means delaying the game, but also like minor things that they never thought about. It's time to start bringing that stuff up. What is the impact of the game? So if you have access to the beta and you've been playing it, please do your part, submit feedback, talk in the Discord, share your experiences to help develop the game further. And without further ado, I think that's good for this video. It's gone on long enough of me rambling. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.